for as we're moving them through. So today we're going to be talking about legal holds. Now, for those of you who know what legal holds are, this will be review, but just always worth setting our definitions here as we get started. So a legal hold is a process that an organization uses to preserve all forms of potentially relevant information when litigation is pending or reasonably anticipated. Now, legal holds can encompass both paper and digital information. So really we're sort of taking this concept from the paper-based world where an organization might be advised that litigation was upcoming, and so they take actions with their system to ensure that they were preserving their documents. A legal hold suspends disposition or processing of documents and records, so it's freezing them into place so no further changes can be made to them. Now, it's important in that context to also talk about what a legal hold is to a document management software, or a DMS. A DMS helps to organize, control, and share information on documents and records. So it's not just a place, we're not just a repository where we're putting them, we're also organizing, controlling, and sharing that information. And obviously to make document search simple and efficient. Legal hold can disrupt document disposition. That's by design. And it's important to consider how a DMS can be impacted by a legal hold. And a legal hold must be enacted to be complied. So simply saying these are under legal hold isn't enough. You actually have to do an action to them, and a DMS must be able to demonstrate that legal holds have been executed as well, along with a date and timestamp. So some of the core concepts that we're going to be looking at within FileHold and things to keep in your mind. First of all, in FileHold, all documents and records are preserved in perpetuity in their original format. So we're never dealing with damaging the documents. If it's a PDF when it comes in, it's stored as a PDF, it goes out as a PDF. And by definition, we never purge those documents out. So by definition, FileHold preserves those documents in perpetuity. Any actions taken to a document are captured in the permanent audit record. This is also very important so that we're not just doing actions to the document, we're recording when those actions were done and who did those actions to a document. Only through an event or user action can a document be deleted. So there's no system process in FileHold that will remove those documents. They're stored into the system and preserved there moving forward. Workflow prevents documents from being deleted either by user action or events. So when a document is under workflow, it is preserving that document to move forward. Documents can be added to a workflow either as a main or a supporting document, both of which are protected. So this is the mechanism that we're going to use in order to enact our legal hold. We're going to be using our workflow as the trigger for that action. Now, creating workflow in FileHolds, which is really adding supporting documents to a workflow, are in two stages. There's going to be the setup, which involves creating a workflow for the legal hold, creating an offline schema for legal holds, associating the workflow template, and then using auto start. And then we have the execution, which is adding offline legal hold document with important metadata tags relating to the purpose of your legal hold, finding the documents and records requiring legal hold via search, adding those documents as supporting documents, and then when it's complete, approving the workflow. And I'm going to take you through all of those steps, but I always like just to sort of set the table as to what we're looking at today. So in that case, let's take a look at creating legal holds in FileHold. Oops, that's a repeat of the previous slide. My apologies. So our hypothetical use case for today, in this scenario, we'll be dealing with a dispute with a vendor, the Acme Co. So I've created a company name called Acme Co. This is obviously for anything you want to do. The requirement is that we preserve all documents related to any dealings with the company, invoices, sales orders, and contracts. These need to be preserved until the legal action is complete. In preparation, I have three schemas: AP invoices, sales orders, and contracts, with a common metadata field called vendors, which I can use to locate the relevant documents. So that's the setup I've done before we got into this today. So FileHold workflow, or everything you ever want to know about supporting documents, but we're afraid to ask. Let's take a dive into this. So I'm going to start off by going into my server. So let's take a look over here. And right now we're in the FileHold web client, for those of you who don't know this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a workflow template. So we've seen this before, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through the steps on this. We're just going to go through the actions for it. So we're going to click on our workflow templates, and we're going to ask to add a workflow. Then from here, we're going to give this a name. And so because we want to be clear about this, we're going to call this legal holds. Now, obviously, you could use whatever name you wanted to. It's up to you. And I definitely want a custom naming pattern on this. So we're going to be using the naming pattern that we're going to be creating to generate this on the document. But I really would prefer to have the metadata fields properly set up, which I'm going to do in a moment. So I'm going to come back to the custom naming. That's going to make this a lot more clear. So now we're going to add an activity to it. It's going to be a one-step workflow. So you could have multiple steps into this. You could make your first step a review task. You're asking someone to go out and find the related documents, or you're going to have multiple steps of approval before it gets done. But in our use case here, we're going to do a single step for approval. So we're going to call our task here release. Oh, let's try spelling that correctly. So we're going to call this release legal hold documents. And then for our approver, we're going to give this to the workflow initiator. And the reason for that is because only certain people can add documents to a workflow once it's in process. The workflow initiator, a cabinet administrator who owns a cabinet where those documents reside, or a senior library administrator or grader. So essentially, it's a very limited pool. So in this case, I want the workflow initiator to be the person who's going to be given the right to add the documents into there. So that's who's going to be getting this action into place. Our options for this, we're not going to do one of X, we only have one person. Checkout's not going to be involved with this process, so I'm going to leave that off to the side. And we're not going to be doing any postponing, although we absolutely could if we had to for whatever reason. If we wanted to postpone the workflow to delay it to another task, we could do that, such as, we need a continuance, we need to expand the legal hold. We could be using that as a category as well. But I'm going to be skipping most of that, and we're going to go to the do by. And in this case, I'm going to set an arbitrary deadline. I'm going to choose 1 year, so 365 days. Again, it's under your empowerment what you want to do, but I'm definitely going to make sure that the workflow initiator can make a change to that if they want to. So if they know the legal hold only has to go for 6 months, they could change the dates accordingly. So again, you can enact this however you want to. And then for task instructions, we're going to put once complete, approve to release the documents. Excellent. So we've got our workflow task is done. You'll notice our task here is going to be ending the workflow. So it's a final task in this. I could have multiple steps to get to this, but in this case, this is all I need, that one task to be done to do the approval. Perfect. This is sufficient for now. We're going to come back and look at this in a moment, but this is sufficient. So we're going to save that. That's our first task. We've created our legal hold. Now we're going to move to our second task, which is going to be setting up a document schema. So under library configuration, document schemas, we're going to build ourselves a new schema for this. So we're going to go add schema. And again, we're going to call this legal holds so that we know what we're doing with this. Now, here's where it's important. Instead of this being a document or a record, we're going to make this an offline document. An offline document, if you've never used one, is the metadata card without having a document attached to it. So it's what's going to allow me to create the categories of information that I need, and then this way I can use this to trigger the process. So it's like creating an abstract process related document as opposed to a physical document that I'm scanning and adding in, or an electronic document. This is just an offline document. It's the only part of this I need. Now for the membership, again, we can include this to anybody. In this case, I want everybody to see this legal hold. I want to be able to see that there's a legal hold that's currently into place. So I'm going to choose all my FileHold groups and add them in because I want everyone to have access to this. That doesn't mean they're going to be playing with the workflow. It doesn't mean they're going to be creating the documents, but it does mean I want them to be able to see this potentially when they have a legal hold that's happening. For the metadata fields, again, I've got my choices, but we're going to build a couple of metadata fields quickly because this is something that by now we've all looked at this. So we're going to make a matter number for this. We're going to make that a text field, and 20 characters should be fine. We're then going to add another metadata field to this, and we're going to make this a matter description. And we're going to make this a FileHold managed drop-down list. So matter description. And then we're going to manage our menu items, and we're going to build some items into this. So anticipated legislation. And fortunately, by using the web client, I get my spell checker. So we're going to add that in. And then we're going to use active litigation and internal review. There you go. So I've got 3 categories there for how I want to treat this workflow when it comes in towards the document. And we're going to save that. And then that's perfectly good. And we're going to save that. So we built our second metadata field. And now we need one more field onto this, which we're going to do as a new metadata field. And this time we're going to do expected end date. And then for our metadata field onto this, we're going to use a date field. And I want to use my short date format year, month, day, because that's how I want these expressed. Again, you can tweak these to however you want them to be, and we're going to save that. Perfect. So now we've got our 3 metadata fields. This is as much as I need to do for this. Of course, if I wanted to, I can give it a custom name for the document. So in this case, we're going to choose our name for this. So we're going to ask to automatically rename, and we're going to use the matter number and the matter description. And even if I wanted to, I could do the end date onto it as well, because it doesn't do us any harm. Excellent. Now, one last thing I need to do with this before I walk away, which is add my workflow to this. So we've already built our workflow type. So I can scroll down over to our legal holds, and I can add this to the schema. So now legal holds is associated with it. I also want this to automatically start the workflow in adding a new document of this type. So when I add in my offline document, when I create that document, I want the workflow to kick off immediately. So I've got no pause in between there. After all, it's an active part of the process. All right, so now that we have that, we've got everything that we need to for this. I'm going to save that. Of course, I could be doing other things like putting events onto this or scheduling or lookup, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. We're just going to build this as our offline document type. So we have an offline document type. We have our workflow template. Let's go back and have one last look at the workflow template. So I'm just going to scroll down to our legal review. That looks like that's going to, or legal hold, that's going to be on page 2. There's legal holds. And now here's where I'm going to go into my edit, and we're going to give this a custom name because I want to take the document name for this. So I'm going to take the workflow name followed by the document name. And remember, our document name is coming from the metadata. So that's a great tool we can use for that. And then we're going to choose the workflow name after that. So we've now got our field set up. Everything's ready to go. We're going to say OK. And now we're ready to actually implement our workflow process. So I'm just going to save that information, and we're going to go back to our list, and we're good for the web client for now. So I'm going to walk back over to the desktop application. Because I've changed a bunch of my settings into the background, I'm just going to do a quick refresh. And refresh will make sure that everything is up to date for when I'm grabbing any of my information into here. So you see I've got some sections set up under my legal cabinet over here. I've got litigation and a legal holds area. So we know where our documents are going to want to wind up. But I'm in the inbox right now. So I'm going to go up to File, and we're going to ask to add an offline document. So now I'm going to set the document's metadata, and we are going to choose our legal hold document type. We're going to take our matter number, and we're going to give it the matter number I'd be using for the organization. And we're going to say this is anticipated legislation, and the expected end date for this is going to be, let's do January 1st of 2023. So I've just got a date onto there just so I can have something filed into it. Again, your system, your requirements. Now notice I don't have that delete local document because there is no local document. I'm just making an offline document. So we're going to save that. We've got our document. Now we just need to choose its location. So I'm going to drag this document, which I'll just click the set destination button rather than dragging because I don't trust my mouse right now. And we'll put this into the legal hold section, and then we can send this into the system. So the document now goes into FileHold, and it's now coming under our legal holds over here. And we're going to see here's our document, and you'll notice that when I click on it, it's marked as pending approval. So our workflow has automatically started. So now if I come over to my reviews and approvals under the My Tasks, we'll see here's my approved task, and you'll see the name of it has taken the workflow name with the legal hold after it. So I've fully brought this document in as an offline document, and I've got it tagged and ready to go. I am ready now to add documents to this as supporting documents. So here's the process for that. First thing I have to do is I have to identify my documents. So I'm going to go over to my search. And remember how I said I've got a field on these called vendors. So rather than doing a general search, I'm going to do an advanced search so I can target the exact documents I need. Because these documents share a metadata field, I'm going to go to my common metadata fields, and I'm going to scroll down until I find my vendor field. There it is. And then we're going to enter the name of our company, which in this case is Acme Co., and we do our search for it. So it's found now all my related documents. I've got invoices, contracts, and sales orders. This is likely what I'd expect to see. Maybe I know, maybe I don't know, and that's totally okay. I'm just doing the function here to find the related documents, and I'm using the DMS's search capabilities to identify those documents for me. Now, as an important detail here, I want to show you, I'm just going to remove my metadata and file properties. I've got different statuses on these documents. Some of these were never submitted for a formal approval process. Some of these went through a sign-off process and have already been approved and ready to move forward with. Because of that, I want to be very careful when I'm using a workflow. If I run these through a process for approval, it means these documents will be marked as approved. And an approved document may have a different status and meaning within my organization. I don't want this particular Bob Smith contract to actually be approved. I just want to put it under a legal hold. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to select all of my documents, and I'm going to right click on this to workflow, and I'm going to ask to add this to an existing workflow. Now I have two options as how to add this. I can add this as a main document or as a supporting document. A main document must share the document's visibilities and must share the document's workflow template as part of the schema. And in this case, I do not have that workflow template that we just built. We never associated it with anything other than that legal hold offline document, so I can't make these main documents, but I can make them supporting documents. So I'm going to select the supporting document option, active workflow tasks. If I wanted to, I can open this up and I can see what the task list is, but this is the workflow, and I'm going to say OK. So now those documents have gone into that workflow as a supporting document. So if I select any one of my documents and open up the metadata for it, it's not actually in a workflow itself, but it's still under the protection of a workflow. How do I know that? Because I'm the document owner, but I can't delete the document. Even though I'm a library administrator, I should be able to delete this document, but I cannot. And that's because it's under the protection right now of workflow. We'll also see at the bottom down here that there's an archive and a delete date that will come into effect. So for example, this document is going to delete itself on June 16th of 2029. If I come over here and look at some of the contracts, those dates will be different. So here, these are under a retention policy to delete on Thursday, October 27th, 2022. But we know we need to hold these documents till at least January 1st. This will prevent any of these documents from deleting. The workflow is blocking that process. These documents are now successfully under legal hold. Anybody who comes over here, they'll be able to see the document if they want to. So because I've given this visibility, if they can see this folder, that's not necessarily, I could make them a read-only user on this folder so they can see that the document exists, but they can't add any content. And they can see that it's pending approval. And if they click on the pending approval, they'll be able to see the document and the process that it's going through. As the administrator for this, I can come over to here and I can open up and I can see the document that's going through my legal holds at this time. And if I select this, for example, I can come over to My Tasks, and we'll see that not only do I have the document, so I've got my main document indicated here, so that's our legal hold offline document, but then below that, I have an extensive list of all of my supporting documents here. So I can see all of those in one glance. So we're definitely on our way to having these documents under a legal hold and being fully protected. Now, somebody then asks, are we sure we have all the documents from AcmeCo? I'm not sure if I do or not, so I'm going to go through this and I'm going to select AcmeCo and just do a general search. Now I'm looking for all the documents, but this time I want to exclude that search term from my metadata. So I'm going to go to File Only. So now I'm asking, go in and look at the text of these documents as opposed to just the metadata. We run our search and we found an email, and it's an email where the word AcmeCo does not appear within the metadata for it. So this is also something that I want to add in. No problem, because I'm the initiator for this, so I can go ahead and add this as a supporting document as well. So we're just going to say OK to that, and we've now added this document in too. And we'll see we've lost now the ability to delete this document because it's under our retention policy protected by the workflow status. So this is how the legal hold works. Now these documents are under legal hold. Nobody else can check the documents out, so no further changes can be made to them. No deletion can happen to them. We've suspended this. No further processing or deletion of these documents will happen, and therefore we have these documents protected. If anybody asks to see the legal hold status for these, I can do that very simply by showing a list of what documents are attached to this. And as always, I can export this as a CSV if needed to prove to somebody else what I'm actually holding within the system. All right, so that's our status for these documents. They're in legal hold, and now we go through the litigation. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Whatever the end result was, we are now ready to release these documents from their legal hold. Very simple. I can just come up to here and complete the task. And then from the complete task option, we've all seen this before, it's the workflow approval screen will come up. And now I can go ahead and I can say, yes, this is good. I'm going to approve these documents. By the way, look at the workflow history down here. We can see when all of those documents were added in as supporting documents, when we initiated the process. It's all very controlled. So as a user, I can look at this and I can say, this is fine. So now I can do my official approval for this, and I can say, litigation did not proceed, documents can be released. Now, unlike somebody else, I'm not just making a note onto this, I also have to put in my password. So I have to sign off on this process. So it's not just me arbitrarily saying that didn't proceed, I'm going to release the documents. I'm going to do a sign off on this. And here's where I could have another task when I was done and send this to my supervisor or send this to another person who I want to make sure does a review of this prior to doing the release. This is particularly important if you've had these documents under a workflow suspension because of the legal hold for an extended period of time. And if I have at the end of that period of time, that's when the workflow, that's when the workflow is released. When I release those documents from that control, the retention policies might kick in at that point. So I might actually be deleting those documents by completing the task on it. And that's why it's important sometimes to have a multi-review process. So we'll go ahead and enter our password, click the thumbs up sign, and we're done. We see we no longer have a document over here. And if I go to my legal holds, we'll now see that my document over here is no longer in workflow. It's been marked as approved. And as anybody can come into this and see who did the approval, so I can see that if I had multiple steps, that could be revealed at this point. If I go into the workflow status report, I can open this up and I can see what happened, that it was done, and I can see my note on it. Litigation did not proceed, documents can be released. And if anybody was to ever ask me later on and they say, I want to see what happened with that, well, again, I can go back into the legal hold over here. I can go into the workflow and I can look at that review and approval history. And this will show the document, but it'll also show documents, and I can see that complete list of what was added into there. So I've got an audit record of what I've actually done with those documents. So if somebody later says, I don't believe you actually have those documents under legal hold, can you prove that? In fact, I can. And I can show what happened with that with a timestamp as to when I did those actions on the documents. Now, really the big thing that I've done here is I've made a distinction between these main documents and these supporting documents. And here's why that's important. Let's go back over to that search screen we were looking at before, or in this case, I just want to go to my advanced search, and we're going to do a search here. We're going to look for our, again, common metadata field for the vendor. Of course, I could have just done this as a simple text, but let's be specific. So Acmeco, and here are my documents. Now, here's the key thing. Because these were supporting documents, the status of them has not changed. So what was not submitted for approval before remains not submitted for approval. The advantage of this means is that I can rest assured that I'm not running these documents through a different process. This is the advantage of a supporting document being added to a workflow. It gives me lots of other tools that I can use, such as, imagine I've got a purchase order. I could attach the sales order or the invoice to that as a supporting document. I am not approving those invoices. I'm simply attaching them into there so that when someone reviews the PO, they can see what happened with the document. Maybe I've got an SOP, so standard operating procedures running through. I've got the drawings for what the people are actually going to be working on, or maybe whatever the recommendations were from health and safety. I can attach those as supporting documents. Doesn't alter the SOP's status, but it simply provides additional information. You have a legal review for a contract. You've got a background check on an onboarding form. Really, anytime you have supporting evidence towards a document or something else that you need to demonstrate is being under a point of control, you can use as a supporting document, which anybody can add as long as they're either the initiator, they're a senior library admin or grader, or they're the cabinet owner where those documents reside. So again, lots of options there to bring them through. Again, not something we use every day, but for something like a legal hold where you need to have additional levels of demonstration of defense, it's a much more powerful tool.